I was 68 when my wife Linda walked out on me. We had been married for 27 years. I remember the exact day. It was a quiet Tuesday morning. I was brewing coffee, humming an old Eagles song, and she walked into the kitchen carrying a suitcase. "I'm leaving," she said flatly, without a trace of emotion. At first I thought it was a joke, but then she handed me a letter, printed and signed, divorce papers. No arguments, no explanations, just silence. Then the door closed behind her. That was it. For 27 years I was faithful, never cheated, never lied. I built a small hardware store from scratch while she stayed home, raised our son, and later worked part-time at the library. We had dinner together every night, traveled in the summers, sent each other silly birthday cards. So I didn't understand. I just didn't understand. A week later our son called. He sounded distant. "Mom told me everything," he said. "She's with someone else now. She's happy. You should try to be happy too." That hit me harder than anything. I lost my wife, and now my son seemed to see me as the enemy. But here's the twist. Linda didn't just leave me for someone. She left me for a man 24 years younger, a man named Travis, a fitness instructor she met at the local gym. She worked out there 3 times a week. I thought it was just for health. Turns out it was for him. Travis had a dazzling smile, a six-pack, and an ego the size of Texas. I saw their photos on Facebook. They were in Mexico, cocktails, beaches, #new beginning. I won't lie, I cried. Sitting in the garage on an old workbench I made with my father, I felt ashamed, hurt, and worst of all, discarded. For a long time I disappeared, stopped going to church, ignored calls, even closed the store. It was too painful to be there alone. But here's the thing about pain. It either breaks you or makes you stronger. I started walking every morning, first around the house, then a mile, then 2. Eventually I joined a hiking group for older men, not for friends, just to feel human again. One day on a hike I met Harold. He was 74. His wife passed away from cancer after 50 years together. He looked at me and said, "Grief is grief, but don't waste your breath on someone who doesn't deserve it." That stuck with me. Over time I began to heal. Started volunteering at the library, yes, the same one where she worked. Took woodworking classes at the community center, even helped a neighbor's 11-year-old build a treehouse. I started smiling again, quietly, cautiously, but it was a smile. And then something happened. 2 years after Linda left, she knocked on my door, alone. Her hair was different, her eyes tired. She said, "Can I come in?" We sat in the same kitchen where she once left. She said, "Travis left. He said I was too demanding. He moved to Miami." She looked down. "I was wrong," she said. "I traded true love for excitement, and the excitement is over." She asked if we could try again. 27 years, shared memories, shared life. I looked at her and I realized something. I was no longer angry, but I wasn't in love either. Not with her, not with the woman who left without a fight. I said, "Linda, I hope you find peace, but I've already started a new chapter and I like the man I'm becoming." She left in tears, but this time it didn't break me, it freed me. Now at 70, I still walk, still create. I mentor boys without fathers. Every Thursday I meet with a group of men for coffee. We talk about life, loyalty, and what really matters. Because the truth is, love doesn't always last. But respect for yourself is non-negotiable. Sometimes by losing what you thought was everything, you actually find yourself. Next story in 10, 987654321. I met Elaine on a rainy afternoon in 1989. She wore a red raincoat, carried a broken umbrella, and smiled like she had known me forever. I was 42, divorced, and not looking for anyone. But she just walked into my bookstore, asked for a copy of Wuthering Heights, and before I knew it, we were having coffee at the little cafe next door. Elaine was vibrant, curious, and kind. I was cautious, quiet, and stuck in my routine. She said I reminded her of a lonesome jazz song, sad, comforting, and always playing in the background. I told her she made life feel like spring again. A year later, we married. I sold the bookstore, we bought a modest home on the edge of town, and I started working in a logistics company to bring in a steadier income. She worked part-time as a librarian and spent weekends volunteering at the shelter. Life was ordinary, comfortable, trusting. We didn't have children, not by choice, but by fate. 2 miscarriages left her heartbroken. I tried to hold her, to help her heal. But some part of her closed off after that. Still, we stayed close, quiet, loving. We took road trips every summer. We watched old westerns and baked cinnamon bread every Sunday morning. She cried during documentaries. I held her hand during thunderstorms. And then, after 25 years, she was gone. It was a Thursday. I remember the weather. It was clear, cold, and quiet. I got up early like always, made coffee, toasted bread, called her name. Silence. Her side of the bed was cold. I checked the bathroom. Empty. No note. Her purse was gone. Some clothes too. At first I thought maybe she went to visit her sister in Ohio, maybe an emergency. I waited the whole day. I called her sister, who hadn't heard from her. I called her friends. None of them knew anything. I filed a missing person report the next morning. The police took it seriously. They searched, questioned neighbours. No signs of a break-in. No witnesses. Her car was gone. And then came the real blow. Her bank account had been emptied the day before she vanished. Joint savings too. Everything. Gone. I felt like I was unravelling. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. I kept listening for the sound of her keys, her humming in the kitchen, the creak of the floorboards in the hallway. Weeks passed, then months. No leads, no updates, until one morning I got a letter. No return address, no signature, just a handwritten message on plain paper. Don't look for me. I'm fine. I need a new life. I'm sorry. That was it. I stared at those words for hours. New life? From what? We had no major fights, no debt, no abuse. What life was she running from? I hired a private investigator. It cost me most of what I had left. He found her, eventually. She was living in Phoenix, Arizona, under her maiden name, with a man named Victor, a retired dentist, 65, widower, wealthy. They met during a book club Zoom group during the pandemic, had been talking for 2 years. He visited once, apparently while she went to visit her sister. They'd fallen in love, she told him, and she wanted a fresh start before she turned 60. I felt like someone had dug a hole in my chest and poured cement into it. So this was it. A new chapter? Was I just a forgotten prologue? I considered going there, seeing her, demanding answers. But what would that change? She left, on her own, with someone else, with someone who wasn't me. That winter was the darkest of my life. I barely left the house. I lived on canned soup and crackers. Everywhere I looked reminded me of her. Her books, her handwriting on the fridge, the scent of her perfume still clinging to the pillows. One night, I found an old tape. Our 10th anniversary. She was laughing, dancing in the living room, holding a cake I'd baked for her. I was off-key singing some Sinatra song in the background. I watched it 5 times that night. Then I cried like I hadn't in years. Spring came, then summer. One day, while walking through the park, I saw a boy trying to fix his bike chain. He looked so frustrated, so determined. I helped him. We got the chain back on, and he smiled like I'd saved the world. His mother came running over. Sarah, a single mum, maybe in her late 30s. We talked, briefly. I started walking in that park every Saturday. Sometimes I saw them, sometimes not. But little by little, I found myself reconnecting with the world. I joined a men's reading group at the library. I started volunteering at the same shelter Elaine once loved. People asked about my wife. I said she moved away. I left out the rest. 2 years after she left, I got another letter. This time it was longer and signed. Dear Tom, I know I hurt you in the worst way. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know it wasn't your fault. I loved you for so many years, but something inside me faded. I felt like I was sleepwalking through life. I found someone who made me feel alive again, and I was too much of a coward to tell you face to face. You were always good to me, better than I deserved. I hope you're okay. I think about you more than you believe. Elaine. I read it, then burned it. I didn't need closure. I didn't want sympathy. I wanted peace. Now, 10 years later, I sit on my porch, watching kids ride bikes down the street. The world moves on, even when your heart tries to stay frozen in time. I never remarried, never saw Elaine again. But I found something unexpected. Clarity. She chose her path, and I chose not to let her betrayal define me. Sometimes, in the quiet moments, I still hear her humming, and it doesn't hurt as much anymore. Next story in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I was 68 years old when I found out my wife had been seeing someone else. Her name was Linda. We had been married for 32 years. 32. I still remember the day I met her. It was 1979 and I had just come back from serving in the Navy. She was a waitress at a local diner, and I was a regular with a big appetite and too many stories to tell. Linda had these kind eyes, the type that made you feel safe, understood, like home. We weren't rich. We never had fancy cars or vacation homes. But we had something better. We had each other. At least I thought we did. We raised 2 boys. I worked in construction. She stayed home until the kids were older, then took a job at a bookstore downtown. We had a rhythm. Dinners at 6, church on Sundays, small arguments over coffee strength or laundry loads. I thought I knew everything about her. Her favourite songs, the way she liked her toast, the laugh she did when she was trying not to laugh. I really thought we were forever. But forever turned out to be shorter than I imagined. It started with small things. Linda began staying late at the bookstore more often. Said they were doing inventory or training new staff. I didn't think much of it. After all, we trusted each other. Then came the silence, the dinners where she barely spoke, the phone she always kept face down, the strange texts at night that she'd brush off as wrong numbers. I asked her once, gently, if everything was okay. She smiled, touched my hand, and said, "Of course, sweetheart, just tired." But her eyes didn't smile with her lips. One night, I couldn't sleep. Something inside me felt off. So I got up, walked into the living room, and saw her phone buzzing on the coffee table. I know I shouldn't have, but I looked. The message read, "I miss you already. Last night was perfect." My heart stopped. I stood there, holding her phone like it was a grenade. For a full minute, I couldn't breathe. She walked in, saw me, and froze. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I just asked, "Who is he?" She sat down, like her knees had given out. "His name's Mark," she whispered. "It's been going on for 6 months." 6 months, while I was cooking her dinner, while we were watching our grandkids, while I was buying her flowers every other Friday. My whole world cracked open. I didn't say anything for a long time. I just sat there numb. She tried to explain, said she felt invisible, that I stopped noticing her years ago, said Mark made her feel alive again. I asked, "Did you love him?" She didn't answer. That told me everything. For the next few weeks we lived like ghosts in the same house. I slept in the guest room, she stayed in the bedroom. We avoided each other like strangers. I didn't tell the kids, not yet. I didn't want to ruin their image of their mother. Maybe part of me still hoped she'd change her mind. But then, one morning I found a suitcase by the door. "I'm leaving, Richard," she said softly. "Mark has a place. I'm going to stay with him." She didn't cry. I didn't either. I just watched the door close behind her. 32 years. Gone. Just like that. The house felt bigger without her, colder. I kept looking at her empty chair at the table. Her toothbrush still sat in the bathroom for weeks. I couldn't throw it away. I started walking every morning, 5 miles, sometimes more, just to clear my head. Sometimes I cried on those walks. I'm not ashamed of that. People talk about heartbreak like it's a metaphor. It's not. It's a real physical pain. In your chest, your gut, your bones. I saw Mark once at the grocery store. He was younger, taller, nice suit. He nodded at me like he was sorry. I didn't nod back. My sons eventually found out. They were angry, at her mostly. I told them not to hate their mother. They tried, but it wasn't easy. Holidays were the worst. Thanksgiving, Christmas, she wasn't there, but neither was the woman I remembered. About a year after she left, I got a letter. A real one. In the mail. It was from Linda. She said things didn't work out with Mark, that it all moved too fast, that he wasn't who she thought he was. She wrote, "I made a terrible mistake, Richard. I see that now. I was selfish. I was scared. But I never stopped loving you." She asked if we could meet, just to talk. I sat with that letter for hours, read it 5, 6, 7 times. I thought about the decades we spent together, the good and the bad. I agreed. We met at the same diner where we first saw each other. She looked older. So did I. Her eyes were tired but soft. She apologized, really apologized, said she didn't expect forgiveness, just wanted me to know the truth. I listened. I didn't say much. Then I asked her something I hadn't asked in over a year. "How have you been sleeping?" She smiled, tears in her eyes. "Not well," she said. We didn't get back together, not fully, but we started talking more. Phone calls, occasional walks, holidays with the boys. She never asked to move back in, and I never offered. But slowly, piece by piece, the bitterness faded. I don't know if I ever fully forgave her, but I know this. I didn't want to spend the rest of my life angry. Life's too short for that. Linda passed away 2 years ago, cancer, fast and cruel. I was by her side when she left, held her hand. In the end, she looked at me and said, "Thank you, Richard, for giving me one last chance to be part of your life." I said, "You always were." I still sit on our porch some nights, looking at the stars. I don't hate her. I don't even resent her. I remember the good more than the bad, and I think maybe that's what love is in the end. Holding on, even after it breaks. Next story in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I was 70 years old when I found the letter that shattered everything I thought I knew about my wife. Her name was Martha. We met in 1976 in a small town outside of St. Louis. I had just come back from working on the railroads up north. She worked as a librarian. Her quiet confidence caught me right away. We married a year later, and for the next 28 years, I believed I had found the love of my life. We raised 2 children. We went on road trips every summer. We even bought a little cabin near the lake where I used to fish with my father. Our life was simple, but I never complained. I didn't need fancy vacations or expensive things. I had my wife, my kids, my quiet home. Then came her illness. In her early 60s, Martha was diagnosed with breast cancer. It was hard, but she was strong. She went through chemotherapy, lost her hair, but she smiled through it. I took care of her every day, never missed an appointment. I held her hand through the pain. She passed away peacefully one morning, in her sleep, with my hand still wrapped around hers. A month after the funeral, I started going through her things. I didn't want to, but the house felt too full and too empty all at once. That's when I found the letter, hidden in the bottom drawer of her desk under stacks of old tax papers. It wasn't addressed to me. It was from someone named David. The handwriting was neat, masculine, confident. It read, "Martha, I still think about you every day. I know we made a promise that we would never contact each other again, but sometimes I wonder what would have happened if you had chosen me instead." My heart started pounding. I read it 3 more times. The date on the letter was 1993. I tried to remember what was happening that year. Our son had just started high school. We were planning to renovate the kitchen. Everything seemed normal. But now I questioned everything. I found 4 more letters, all from the same man. Some were romantic, others were full of regret. One of them said, "I hate that I had to watch you marry him, but I respected your decision. I just never stopped loving you." Another one ended with, "You once told me that if things had been different, I would have been the father of your children. I carry that thought every day." I sat there in silence, unable to breathe. My wife, the woman I had shared my entire life with, had been in love with someone else. I didn't sleep that night. I reread the letters, looking for clues. I searched through photo albums, old calendars, anything that might reveal the truth. And then, tucked between 2 pages of her 1989 journal, I found a photograph. It was her and a man I didn't recognize. They were young, maybe in their late 20s, standing in front of a lake. She was smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years. On the back, in her handwriting, it said, "Lakewood, David, summer of 78. That was a year before we got married." It hit me like a punch to the chest. Man, David wasn't just some old friend. He was the man she almost chose. Over the next few weeks, I spiraled. I kept it all to myself, not knowing how to talk to my kids about it. I started wondering if they were even mine, so I did something I never imagined I'd do. I took a paternity test. Waiting for the results was agonizing. Every day felt like a betrayal to my own family, but when the results came back, I cried harder than I had in years. They were mine. Both of them. That gave me a strange sense of peace. At least that part of my life was real. But the letters still haunted me. I couldn't stop thinking about David. Who was he? Was he still alive? Did he ever try to contact her again after those letters? One morning I did what any man in my position would do. I searched his name online. It took days, but I found him, still living in Missouri. Never married, no kids, worked as a writer, now retired. I stared at his picture for hours. He was older now, of course, but it was definitely him. The man from the photograph. I debated for weeks whether or not to contact him. What would I say? What could I even ask? But one morning I got in my truck and drove. 4 hours. No plan, just a destination. He lived in a quiet neighborhood, in a house smaller than mine. I sat in the car for 20 minutes before finally walking to his front door and knocking. He opened it slowly. At first he didn't recognize me. "David?" I asked. "Yes?" "I'm Martha's husband." Was. His eyes widened. He stepped back and invited me in without a word. We sat at his kitchen table for hours. At first we didn't talk about her. We just sat. Then he poured us each a drink and finally spoke. "I always wondered if this day would come," he said. I told him about the letters, about finding them, about the photograph. He didn't deny any of it. In fact, he looked almost relieved. "She loved you," he said quietly. "She really did. But she also loved me, in a different life, one she never got to live." He told me everything. How they met at university, how they were inseparable, how they planned a life together. But then her father got sick, he explained. She moved home to take care of him, and by the time he passed, you were in her life. I listened in silence. She wrote to me once a year, just once. Birthdays, holidays. I kept them all, he said, getting up and pulling out a wooden box. He handed it to me. Inside were letters in her handwriting, the same loops, the same curves I knew so well. She never sent them, but she wrote them. One stood out. It was dated just 2 years before she died. It read, "You were the what if in my life, but I never regretted my choice. He gave me love, stability, a family, but you were my fire." I felt tears run down my face. I didn't feel angry anymore, just human. Before I left, David walked me out to the porch. We stood there in silence, 2 old men, bound by a woman neither of us fully had. "She chose you," he finally said. Even when she loved me, she chose you." I nodded. "She was a good woman," I said. "The best," he replied. We shook hands. I never saw him again. That night, I drove home under a blanket of stars. I didn't feel broken anymore. I felt complete. Not everything in life makes sense. Not every love is simple. But in the end, she stayed. She built a life with me. She loved our children. And even if part of her heart lived in another time, she gave me everything she had left. And that was enough. Next story in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. My name's George. I'm 68 years old, and I've lived nearly my whole life in a small town in Ohio. Folks here know each other for decades. Sometimes that's a blessing, sometimes it's not. I married Marilyn when I was 28. She worked as a nurse in the same local clinic where I handled maintenance and supplies. I don't know if it was love at first sight. I've never believed in such things, but she made me feel at ease. She was beautiful in a quiet way, always smiling, and she really knew how to listen. And I've always been a talker. We tied the knot a year later. It wasn't a big wedding, just dinner with family and a few friends. We didn't need a grand affair. We were happy. We spent 27 years together. I thought we were a team. Sure, we had our ups and downs, arguments about finances, the usual stress of raising a child, but we always came back to each other. We built a house, raised our son Jake, and stayed afloat through it all. Jake's now in Seattle, working as an engineer. He's a good man. I thought, after everything, that Marilyn and I had made it. We were in the home stretch, coasting toward retirement, peace and quiet, no more surprises. I was wrong. It started with an odd Amazon receipt. We shared an account, and I noticed a purchase I hadn't made. Perfume. Expensive perfume. The same kind I bought her for our 20th anniversary. At first I figured she'd just treated herself, but something felt off. She hadn't worn that scent in years. I asked her, half joking, "Back to the old perfume, huh?" She paused, just a second too long, and then smiled. "Oh, just a good deal. Might give it as a gift." I didn't say anything, but something inside me stirred. That night I couldn't sleep. It wasn't just the perfume. It was the little things. She started going out more. "Just meeting Linda for coffee," she'd say, or "Book club's running late tonight." I trusted her. Of course I did. 27 years. Why wouldn't I? But the seed was planted. A week later I checked her phone. I'd never done that before. I hated myself for it, but curiosity, or maybe fear, took over. There were no messages. But in her recently deleted folder I found a string of texts. Just one side of the conversation. Hers. Things like, "Last night was amazing. He's starting to ask questions. Same time next Thursday." My heart dropped. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours. My hands were shaking. I remember whispering, No, this can't be." The next day, I didn't say a word. I acted normal. We had breakfast, read the paper. She smiled like everything was fine. I felt like a ghost in my own home. I needed answers, not guesses, so I did something I'm not proud of. I followed her. The following Thursday, she left around 6:30, said it was her book club. I waited 10 minutes, then got in my truck and drove. I didn't even know where I was going, but my gut guided me. I spotted her car at a little out-of-the-way diner about 15 minutes from town. Inside, through the window, I saw her laughing with a man, maybe her age, maybe a little younger. He reached across the table and touched her hand. I nearly threw up. I didn't confront her, not that night. I couldn't. I drove around for hours, parked by the river for a while, sat in silence. The next morning she made coffee like nothing had happened. I watched her pour my cup and I just stared at her hands. The same hands that held mine during Jake's birth. The same hands that wrote me birthday cards and rubbed my back when I had the flu. I couldn't bring myself to speak, not yet. I needed more. Proof, clarity. Over the next week, I became someone I didn't recognize. I checked her call logs. I followed her again, took pictures from the truck, like a damn private detective. And every time, it was him. Same diner, same smiles. Sometimes they'd leave in his car. One night she came home late, said her friend Linda had a crisis. I nodded, smiled, and kissed her on the forehead. Inside, I was breaking. Eventually, I decided I had to talk to her. I didn't want to fight. I didn't want yelling. I wanted the truth. Quiet, honest truth. It was a Sunday evening. Jake had called earlier, just checking in. After we hung up, I asked her to sit with me on the porch. She brought out lemonade like always. And then I said, "Marilyn, are you seeing someone else?" She froze, didn't blink, didn't move. Then, in the softest voice, she whispered, "George, I didn't mean to." I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just sat there, waiting. She started talking. Said it'd been going on for 6 months. His name was Paul, a retired teacher she met through a community event. They had coffee, then lunch, then one thing led to another. I didn't go looking for it, she said. It just happened. I wanted to scream. How does something like this just happen after 27 years? She said she felt invisible, that after Jake moved out, after retirement started looming, she didn't feel needed anymore. That Paul listened, complimented her, made her feel alive. "I still love you," she said, "but it's different now." That sentence broke something in me. I stood up. I didn't say anything. I went inside, shut the bedroom door, and sat on the edge of the bed for hours. The silence between us the next few days was deafening. We didn't talk, we didn't eat together, we just existed. Then one morning I left a note on the kitchen table. "I'm going to stay with my brother for a while. I need time." She didn't call. She didn't come after me. And maybe that told me everything I needed to know. I stayed with my brother for 3 weeks, told Jake I was helping him with house repairs, didn't have the heart to explain, not yet. During those weeks I thought a lot about life, about how love changes, how people drift without realizing it, and how betrayal isn't always violent. Sometimes it's quiet, almost gentle, and maybe that's worse. When I came back home, things were different. We didn't pretend anymore. We talked openly about pain, disappointment, and what we wanted next. We decided to see a counsellor. Neither of us wanted to lose what we had built, our family, our memories. Slowly, step by step, we started rebuilding trust. It wasn't easy. Some days felt like walking on glass, but there was still love there, buried deep but alive. I learned that marriage isn't about perfection. It's about commitment, forgiveness, and sometimes painful honesty. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know this. Even after the deepest wounds, there can be healing. So, here I am, a 68-year-old man, still learning how to forgive, how to love again, and how to keep going. Because life, after all, doesn't stop at betrayal. It goes on.